This is the Plagmanrules Podcast. Everybody, welcome. It is Friday the 13th. All right, Friday the 13th of October. And we've only got just a few things on the docket today. I don't want to do a super long show. So we're going to talk about, of course, the big event of the week. Sylvester Stallone has announced to direct Creed 2. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. But of course, we're going to start with the Star Wars The Last Jedi trailer. I'm going to go through some of the key highlighted moments that I think are worth talking about, and some possible speculations and stuff, and some ideas that I have after seeing the trailer. Okay, so let's start with this. We're getting into the final stretch before the release of The Last Jedi. So just some general reactions before we get into the kind of scene by scene, clip by clip little analysis here without, we're not going to go way too far into, we're not going to stop, freeze frame everything. Just in a general mood, I think this is a really great trailer. Now, is it as good as the Chewie We're Home trailer for Force Awakens? Nah, it didn't quite give me that excitement. But it kind of led to kind of the big speculation train, which is, I think of all the recent Star Wars trailers, this is the one I think has made us think the most and made us question it the most as far as, can we try and piece some of this together, kind of ideas. So in that regard, yeah, I think it is the best we've gotten. And of course, obviously, any Star Wars trailer, give it to me, I'll watch it. I was actually not correct. I think in my prediction on Monday, I kind of said that this trailer would alienate some people, but nah, turns out mostly everybody loves it. So, okay, I was wrong there. Let's get into it here. Okay, so obviously the trailer starts with Snoke. He's talking to potentially Kylo, right? And he's saying, when I first found you, all this raw power and all that stuff. Anyway, so the assumption to make is that he's talking to Kylo. Now, I am in the boat, and I think a lot of people are in this boat too. I think he's actually talking to Rey. And as we see at the end of the trailer, it's a little more obvious that he's talking to Rey, or more assumed, I should say, that he's talking to Rey when he's saying fulfill your destiny, and then supposedly suspending her, when she's in duress at the end of the trailer. There's a pro and a con kind of thing as far as who is he talking to, and I think both have good points here. So the pro of Snoke is talking to Rey is that if Snoke were saying this to Kylo, when I found you, I had never seen such raw, I'm paraphrasing here, but, I had never seen such raw power before, something like that. Now, of course, we don't know the full story about how Snoke seduced Kylo or Ben Solo from the light side to the dark side, but presumably that happened after he had started training with Luke, right? By that point, Luke would have tapped into that a little bit, and he would have taken that raw strength or raw power or whatever to where Kylo is a sufficient enough Jedi or trained in the Jedi arts warrior or whatever you want to call it. That would mean that he has to be talking about somebody else, right? Well, here's the con to the idea that he's talking to Rey. Snoke, he might have met Kylo before Luke started training him. Again, we don't know the full story yet, so maybe when Kylo first met Snoke, it was before Luke had started training him. So in that case, yeah, then that kind of raw strength that Snoke is talking about, that could have been directed at Kylo. That's the thing. We're probably, and again, it's going to be up to the last minute here as far as who's he talking to, if it even shows up in the movie. We've had that problem before with Rogue One trailers, but I think we're close enough, and besides, he being, I should say, Rian Johnson, has said that it's pretty much a picture lock at this rate. Everything's done, special effects are done, and it's just kind of sitting there for another couple months before we get to see it. Anyway, so then we get Rey gets a couple of training sequences, and she's kind of talking about, this power has been within me all this time, it's always been there, kind of, your stereotypical stuff. But I want to get to the part, of course, where Luke notices that when she's using the Force, the ground around her is cracking, which is something, obviously, when Luke was training, nothing like that ever happened. And even when he was a full-fledged Jedi by the end of Return of the Jedi, he never had that kind of thing. So he says, I've seen this kind of raw strength once before. And he says, it didn't scare me then, it scares me now. My big question is, and again, under the assumption of the trailer, he's talking about this raw strength once before he's talking about Kylo, right? I think he's talking about Snoke. Because obviously, as we know from The Force Awakens, Kylo did not just on his own decide to go against Luke. He was seduced by Snoke, and Snoke pretty much told him, hey, kill your master, and supposedly we can take from there, destroy whatever temple or whatever it was that Luke had built up, because we see, the rubble of it, both in the kind of flashbacks in Force Awakens and in both of the trailers so far for The Last Jedi. And plus the next line is, it didn't scare me then, it does now. So it didn't scare me then. You think Kylo, if he was training him, yeah, obviously he wouldn't have been scared by Kylo being a Force user because, it's in his genes. So I'm thinking, it's kind of an out there like 20% thing. The smart money is on he's talking about Kylo, but Snoke, there's an idea bubbling up in my mind to where Luke knows who Snoke is, where he comes from and stuff, and at first Snoke was deceptive and he wasn't really showing off his bad side. Obviously, you don't want to do that if you're trying to take down the Jedi. Maybe, yeah, he's like a former politician or something, where he got acquainted with Luke, or maybe he was at one point a part of the rebellion, or maybe he and Luke met up sometime and that Snoke was part of the Empire before. We don't know this guy's story. 20% chance is what I'm putting it on, that maybe when Luke says, I've seen this kind of raw strength once before, he's talking about Snoke and not Kylo. Anyway, so yeah, back to that line of, it didn't scare me then, it does now, that Luke says. I think this is the point in the movie, because of course the one line everybody wanted to talk about from the first trailer for The Last Jedi was, it's time for the Jedi to end. I'm thinking that after he says this and Rey kind of, goes after him or something and tries to convince him to keep training her, that's when he says, no, I only know one truth. It's time for the Jedi to end. I don't know if Mark Hamill performs it like that, and I can't change my voice up enough to sound like Mark. That's what I think that comes in. And I think this is about an hour into the movie. As far as how far into the movie we are, I think it's about an hour. And, we've been hearing about, and we haven't seen any footage yet, to my knowledge, on kind of what Finn and Rose, who's another character who was not in the trailer, what they're doing. And supposedly they're going to go out to this, like, casino and kind of the rich, people of the galaxy kind of undercover mission thing. I'm thinking that's probably going to be toward the beginning of the movie, because as we all know, every Star Wars movie has to end with a big space battle, or most of them do, or a lot of them do at least. So I think that whole space battle, we see a couple clips here and there of it, I think that's at the end, and as we see later on that Finn and Phasma are going to have their combat, but it looks like it's at a First Order base, because you can see the TIE fighters in the background. Now this is later in the trailer, sorry, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here. I think that is part of the finale. I think everything we saw of the speeders going up against the new kind of walkers, that's going to be toward the end or at the end. The space battle's at the end. So I think that's, where that's going to fall into place there. Anyway, so now this is my favorite part of the trailer. This part of the trailer, I don't get goosebumps. That's the common expression when you watch something and you get reaction to something, you have goosebumps. I don't get goosebumps, but if I did, this would have been a goosebumps moment, is when Kylo is in the ship, but it appears from the trailer that he's getting ready to shoot down the control ship that Leia is on. Now, of course, first, this is the first time we see Leia in the trailer, so, immediately you kind of get that gut reaction of, oh yeah, that's right, Carrie Fisher's not gonna, this is her last time. So, after you get over that, I just enjoyed the pure drama of that scene. Realizing that, my God, Kylo has the opportunity here to take out General Leia, but he's also going to take out his mom. And that's kind of the thing. So just that moment when he's right about ready to push the trigger and he doesn't quite do it, and he looks like he's going to start crying at any minute or something. And I'll tell you what, this is kind of leading into my impression that they're going to do something that, I think a lot of pure Star Wars fans are going to be a little ticked about. I'm telling you, I'm thinking Kylo's going to be on a different side by the end of this movie, or at least closer to being on the opposite side by the end of the movie. I don't know if he's going to do a full turn in this one, and then in 9 toward the, by the end of the first act, he's on the side of the Resistance. But I'm just thinking that's the way it's going to go. And again, that's just an implication from the trailer and stuff like that. So it's not definite. I'm not, going to bet the farm on it, but that's the way I'm thinking it looks like it's going to go. Anyway, so then we get a couple of cool shots of, like, the Falcon, and it looks like they're being chased by TIE fighters, and they're going through, like, what are they, tunnels, catacombs, caves? I don't know what they are, but anyway, so that looks like a nice little kind of action beat. Yeah, I don't think that's at the end. I think that's toward the beginning or in the middle somewhere. And yeah, again, I'm just not digging the Porgs. I don't know what it is about them, if it's just their appearance and then the sound effect they made, that whatever that was. I don't know. It just didn't settle with me. I just didn't care for it. Anyway, and then at this point in the trailers, I'm going to get that Finn versus Phasma thing. And again, I do think that's in the finale of the movie at a First Order base. Okay, then we get, a thing where Luke says this is not going to go the way you think, or something like that. And we get a brief little shot of like a snow dog or something. That looked cool. That was like, oh, damn, I didn't see that in any of the promotion art or anything before here. That looks cool. What's that thing doing? That looked pretty cool. And another kind of cool shot, there's a part where Rey is kind of rising up and Luke is kind of looking in the background. He's kind of an imposing figure. So is this like a force test? Like the way that Yoda tested Luke in the cave from Empire Strikes Back. Is that kind of this version of it? Or is this after Luke has said, it doesn't scare me. It didn't scare me then, it does now. And it's time for the Jedi to end. Is that after that, the kind of breakup scene, if you will? So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of a big question mark, is where does that scene fit in and what's it really implying there? Yep, and then we get, the end part with Snoke saying, fulfill your destiny, and Rey, looks like she's in trouble. And then we get, the stumper of stumpers here. I need someone to show me my place in all this. And then Kylo kind of, like he's ready to do something, and he extends his hand. Now again, just from the assumption of the trailer and the way it's implying, he's offering his hand to Rey, and Rey is talking to him. Now, I don't know. I mean, a lot of fans have just gone into this and into this and into this thinking they're zooming in on the backgrounds, trying to figure out if the scenes match up, if the backgrounds match up and stuff. I didn't go to that far of an extreme, but it looks close enough to me. I'm going to say, that is the way that it's going to end up in the movie. So, of course, this is going to go down probably one of two ways. Is Rey joining Kylo and turning to the dark side, or is Kylo joining Rey and he's coming back to the light side? Now, of course, the riskier choice here is going to be turning your protagonist, the first leading female protagonist in Star Wars history, and turning her into a villainess. And, to a degree, that would be a very, very off story choice, something we haven't seen before in Star Wars, with the exception of the prequel trilogy, but who really rooted for Anakin anyways? So that's kind of a risk, and that's something kind of dark and unexpected. But at the same time, just a cynical side of me says Disney is making buku bucks off of young women and young girls who can look up to Rey. Are they really, in the marketing choice of, do you want to make that character an evil character and risk putting in a bad image to all these young girls and young women who are watching Rey and growing up with Rey as these movies keep coming out? So the cynical side of me says that Disney's going to put a stop to that and say, no, we can't do that. We can't go that far. And again, that's just my cynical thinking, but who knows? And instead, like I kind of implied earlier, I think Kylo is going to turn to the light side. Now, whether that's, again, completed by the end of Last Jedi and he's already on the Resistance by the start of Episode 9, or if it's partway into Episode 9, or even before the end of Episode 8 that Kylo is now back with Mom and the rest of the Resistance, who knows? And I've heard some people kind of go off into a third area to where they team up and they both want to take out Snoke and they both want to take out Luke. Now, that would be something very different. That would be something kind of cool to watch, where they're kind of neutral to this whole thing, where they don't care about the Resistance anymore. They don't care about the First Order anymore. They just want to be supreme leaders in the galaxy and take out both of the kind of figures and the head honchos on both sides that are really, even though they're not directly involved in the fights, like the way Luke is not directly involved in the Resistance, and Snoke is not exactly front and center and leading the battle. Instead, he's, off doing whatever in that chair. But yeah, it is kind of cool, that kind of idea. Now, I don't know if I'm going to go that far to agree to that point, but that's something, that's something we can definitely bring up here. Anyway, so yeah, overall, I was very impressed by the trailer. It was really fun to watch, and especially, that last part, when I first saw that, I was like, son of a bitch, because I thought at first that Rey was joining Kylo, but then I thought about it, I'm like, no, it's going to go the other way. Just the way, and the impact of the music behind it and stuff and all that. I think I was already looking forward to this movie. I was already going to go and see it probably once or twice, depending on how good it is. Yeah, it's not like this trailer could have done way too much. Like, it would have to have been a terrible trailer to have to turn me off. They would have to put Benny Hill music or something in. Even then, I probably would still go see it. Okay, now we'll discuss Sylvester Stallone coming back into the directing fold for the Rocky franchise with the sequel to Creed. Now, I'll tell you what, kind of a brief touch-up here. I have it on a previous video, but I don't know if everybody's watched it or not, but Creed from 2015 was number 3 on my top 10 list that year. And it was a terrific movie. I mean, just absolutely the best of the Rocky franchise. Maybe with the exception of the first Rocky. I know it's, everybody has their different opinions about that, but it was good enough to the point where I was like, damn, that might have been better than the original, which is the same feeling I had earlier this summer for War for the Planet of the Apes. I was like, that might have been so powerful a movie that it made me question whether I liked it better than the original. So that's the thing with Creed, was the same feeling I got, and it was also the first movie in more than 5 years where I openly wept watching the movie. It was like pretty much every emotional scene with Rocky got me. I don't know what it was, because I'm not even a big Rocky franchise fan. I've seen the first one. I saw parts of the second and third one. I've seen most of the fourth one. I skipped 5, and I skipped Rocky Balboa. So I don't know the full story on the franchise. Just to have that reaction, I knew I was watching something really good. And of course, I think a big part of that too was just the directorial efforts of Ryan Coogler, who did a phenomenal job. I mean, that single shot second fight scene is terrific. His writing was terrific. The way he wrote the characters and the relationship between Michael B. Jordan and Tessa Thompson, that was great. You know, it reminded me a little bit of Adrian and Rocky in the original, to where it's a relationship that normally wouldn't work out, but you want it to work out, and the characters are so likable. You know, it gave me those feels from the first movie. So as soon as the movie was over, I was like, damn, they better do a second one, because that was terrific. I'd love to see what happens next. Now it's starting to really start to gather momentum now, with Sylvester Stallone directing the movie, and last I've heard, he's also completed a script. So we'll see how that goes. And of course, if you'll remember, Sly also wrote the first Rocky movie. And he was actually Academy Award nominated for his script for Rocky 2. So, yeah, there's a lot more behind it than, oh, he just happened to write the script for the first movie. No, he got an original screenplay nomination for that. Even though, yeah, he's kind of recently, with all the Expendables sequels and all that, he's kind of lowered his pedigree, you know, or his respectability, or whatever you want to call it. He's not quite up to the big level that he was in the late 70s there. But still, you have to remember, this is a guy who also directed the second, third, and fourth one. I think he continued to write most of those, or he had a part in the script or something. I haven't seen him all the way through, and I haven't read up on everything about him. I believe he did have a part to do with writing some of the sequels there. And of course, when you think about it, who's going to know Rocky Balboa better than Sylvester Stallone? Now, a lot of people are complaining, well, why isn't Ryan Coogler coming back? Well, he's got a little project called Black Panther that comes out in a couple months, and I don't blame Warner Brothers at all for wanting to jump on this, because we're already 2 years away, and you don't want to have a sequel that comes out 6 years later. So what do I think about Sly returning to the director's chair for Creed 2? Well, I think if you can't get Coogler, who's going to be busy there, and who knows, maybe after that he wants to do something that he has not done before. You know, he wants to do something totally original after that. Yeah, if he wants to do something totally original, something he hasn't done before, and he doesn't want to come back to this, then, you know, that's fine. But if you're not going to get him, then Sly Stallone, he's a pretty good choice, because he's got some very nice moments here and there as a director. And again, he also knows more about Rocky than anybody. So I think he's an ideal choice if you can't get Ryan Coogler. Now, of course, if we get into a situation where, say, Michael B. Jordan can't come back or something like that, that's when we get some problems. But I think he'll be down for it, and I haven't heard any rumblings of that or anything that he's going to leave the project. That would be a big red flag. Now, my big question, though, the only thing that I think could backfire here is I've read that he's also completed a script. Now, I have not heard officially that it's the script they're going with. I have not heard officially that it's ready to go. But I don't know if I trust Sylvester Stallone as much as a screenwriter as I used to. I mean, and especially when they were mentioning, you know, and it's been rumored now for close to a year that they would bring back Dolph Lundgren as Ivan Drago, and they would have something to do with him. He would be a big part of the sequel. That's kind of that's a little bit of an asterisk for me. I'm like, I don't think you have to do that. What made Creed so good was that it was telling its own story. Sure, Rocky was there. Sure, the mentioning of Paulie and of Adrian was there. Sure, you had Adonis's stepmom, who I can't remember the actress' name, but she did a terrific job. And obviously some archive footage of Apollo Creed there too. So all the old characters who were still relevant, who you wanted in the story, were there. You know, maybe they weren't the star of the movie, but they were there. And again, that romance between Tessa Thompson and Michael B. Jordan works on every level. So that was terrific. So why would you go and do something like that? Dredge up all these other, you know, like, is Mr. T going to come back for Creed 3? And then is a robot version of Apollo Creed going to come in and kind of wreck shop? No, that's not going to happen. It's like, why would you start doing that? Yeah, that's a big question. Are you going to do that, or do you want to do your original story? I would say take Creed 2 in a new direction and do what the first Creed did, which is tell its own story, and if you want some familiar characters there, sure, they're there, but they're not the focus. Rocky was not the focus. He was the supporting character in that movie. Rightfully so, and I think, yeah, if you're going to call it Creed, you can't have Creed starring Sylvester Stallone. That doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all I got to say on that is, yeah, that's a little bit of an asterisk for me, is why do you have to keep going back to all these old characters? I don't think that's necessary. But I think we'd be in a much better boat if we just did a second movie that continues Creed's story where he's, now he's a recognizable name and he's a very respected boxer and he's ready to take on the next challenge and everything. And maybe have it be kind of some elements of Rocky 2 was, yeah, sure, Rocky is going to rematch Apollo, but he's also going through all this stuff in his personal life, because that's, I think, that was the one where Adrian was pregnant, right? And then the son is born. Yeah, I think that's the second one. Do what Rocky 2 did. Make it a more personal level. Let's say that Adonis, Donnie, whatever his name, I think they call him Donnie through most of the movie. Let's say Donnie and Tessa Thompson's character, let's say that they want to get married, but something comes up and all of a sudden they realize we're not ready yet. Or something, have a personal drama in there. And I think that can work much better than any of the boxing stuff, because, sure, when Coogler did that, it was terrific, and I think Michael B. Jordan is up to the task of doing all that stuff again. And of course, it's a Creed sequel, so yeah, we're gonna get that stuff. I don't have any worries there. But I just think that it would be such a better opportunity to get into this second Creed movie and take it into a personal drama direction the way that, in most part, Rocky 2 did. Okay, guys, so that's going to be it for today's edition of the Plagmanrules Podcast. We'll be back again on Monday. We got the weekend box office coming in. We'll talk about that. All right, guys, until then, this has been the Plagmanrules Podcast.